very much for articulating a lot of thoughts that I've had. I also travel a lot, moved to read.
Yeah.
I bought your book when it first came out. I started reading it. And then I started reading all the people you talked about.
Oh, great.
I've never gotten back to your book.
That's fine. I didn't want people to feel obliged to read anybody I mentioned, or I wanted them to be able to do as you have done. So thank you for starting. As I say, you met other people in the corridor. You may come back to where my locker is. Yeah.
Why
Sure.
did you choose to live in Toronto?
Sort of practical reasons. I mean, I was living in England for a long time, and I was offered a job at the National Post when it started up. I never spent any time in Toronto, and I came, and it was a very nice way to land because I ran the book section of the paper. It was very big then, so and I would employ lots of writers, and they all had to talk to me because I was offering them work, and so I made a lot of friends very quickly. And then I quit the paper, but by then I'd fallen in love, and I have a family there, and Toronto's a funny city. You know, it's very difficult to live in, but the people are really great, and they're hardworking, and it's a place where a lot of things are worked out despite all the contempt that people feel for it. I like Toronto a lot, but I love Canada. This country is such a joy. You know, I've just come back from Winnipeg, which is a city that a lot of people speak disparagingly of, but it's the Aboriginal cultural capital of Canada, if not North America. It's very distressing on the one hand, but hugely invigorating on the other. I just went to this incredible evening of Aboriginal music with bands I'd never heard of, and really interesting it was. And every trip I take has some aspect like that. And a lot about writing or any kind of documentary work, photography is about, trying to arrive with a fresh eye. Yep.
What are you reading right now?
I'm reading a couple of fantastic books. One of them is by a guy called Chris Hedges. He, I was going to read you a little. At the moment, I'm writing something like an old-fashioned pamphlet. I did win a prize for this book, but I'm now writing essentially the kernel of a book that no publisher wanted. And I think I will say that they didn't want it because they have to think about a market, and I'm offering something that people don't want to hear right now, and it's called What We Talk About When We Talk About War. And that's a reference to a wonderful American short story writer called Raymond Carver, who wrote a book called What We Talk About When We Talk About Love. And it's about how we narrate ourselves into, through, and out of conflicts, and it uses the Canadian experience in Afghanistan. And it looks at things like the fact that for the first 5 years, apart from the contempt in which you would be held if you suggested that actually the UN was a good idea, actually peacekeeping was an evolving science, and so on. But the thing, it used a lot of aggressive phrases, and one was, and I can cite dozens of them for you, us being told constantly in newspapers, we're not in Afghanistan to build schools for girls. And if you think this, you're out of your mind. I mean, it was incredible, the language. And then, in the second period of the war, which I would say is 2006 to 2009, suddenly, even the right-wing talk shows were talking about acid thrown in girls' faces, and what we're there to build schools for girls. The government made building schools for girls a, quote, signature project. And then, in the third part of the war, which I would say is December 2009, January 2010, when two things happened. One is 4 soldiers and a photographer died at the same time, and then Haiti happened. And Haiti was an interesting moment for Canada. I think that one of the reasons we helped as we did is because it was a lot less complicated to understand that we were doing the things that Canadians do, because most of us are very fortunate, want to share that good fortune, and we were helping people by curing their, or healing their broken limbs and building them houses and giving them medicine. That's a much more straightforward idea of help than bombing people, shooting people, losing your soldiers is. That we, for us, 8 years were told was helping people. It may have been, I'm not sure, but what I was interested in was that from 2009 forward, or 2010, suddenly we weren't talking about the girls at all. The only person that talked about girls after that was Hillary Clinton. So I'm interested, as I say, in how we talk ourselves, how we use story to make a situation legitimate. And so I'm doing a lot of reading that actually I really want to get beyond. I hate this whole war thing, and I can't wait till I have to stop reading about it. But I'm reading an ex-New York Times reporter called Chris Hedges. He wrote a book called War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning. And now he's written a book called The Death of the Liberal Class, which is basically about the failure of people like myself to make a difference. And in terms of novels, a whole bunch. I mean, there's a great book by Alison Pick called Far to Go, which a bookstore owner who said was the best overlooked book of last year, which is about, and it's by a young woman who discovered later in her life she was Jewish, and it's about the Kindertransport, kids being taken out of Czechoslovakia. Very lovely book. I know you have to go to another class, so yes?
Is there any advice you would have to give to aspiring writers like myself?
Yeah, absolutely. Two things. First of all, I would say, ask yourself and answer for yourself why you want to do it. Because that's the most important thing. Are you doing it? When I told my father I wanted to write, he said to me, well, do you want to... I said I want to be a writer. He said, do you want to be a writer or do you want to write? Meaning, do you want the imagined life of being a writer, which probably doesn't exist, or do you want to do the hard work, which means getting up every day and doing other work to make your writing viable? I would say that's the first bit. And if you answered yourself, I have to do it for me, I have no choice, that's a good start. It makes it for a difficult life, but it's a good start. And the second thing I would say is understand its practicalities. You know, I write a blog called The Writing Life for a Muncher website, and it's all about the boring nuts and bolts. There are plenty of people who will tell you whether your page is good or not as, you know, a piece of writing, but I offer practical advice like how to make an article that might pay you 300, pay you 4,000, because you'll need to think about that at some point. But it's, you know, as with any art, it only improves the soul if you do it. So good on you, and I hope it works out.
Thanks.
Sir?
What was your least favorite place to visit during your trial?
Well, I've never thought of it that way, so let's think of, what was my least favorite place? I don't know, I mean, you know,
Bad experiences?
you know, I suppose in a way I should partly not like, you know, if you go to Calgary, where I worked a lot when I was a kid, there are the ugly suburbs that sprawl for, you know, 30 miles right up to the mountains, and you take the first big wind and it'll all blow away. But I found it really hard to even not like those areas, because you just look and you think, how do people live? What are they up to? What happens if you can peel back the roofs of these houses? What are you going to see? And, you know, I think, for instance, of a great novel I read called Some Great Thing, by a guy from Ottawa. Skip the first 20 pages, but then he's got this guy who, a lot of it is about a guy who builds these developments versus a guy who still builds houses with plaster. And it's fantastic in terms of its, how it suddenly makes you, because the great novels make you look at something again. I'm reading I read a book called Annabelle, which is about a hermaphrodite. And I'm telling you, I read a third of my way through, I was looking up and thinking, who of the people I think I know is in this situation? And it brought, you know, most of us, when, as there was this morning, news of transgender people comes on, even though it's much in the news, athletes who run versus women, then it's men and so on, or in the other direction too. Most of us will turn off, but you know, I suddenly realized there's this whole community, and that I failed to see these people and what is their situation is, and that doesn't happen in most novels, but it makes it all very exciting. So I will think about it as I leave. What was my least favorite experience, but I'm hard put to answer that at the moment. It's a great country.
No.
Okay, one more, and then I'll...
Okay, yeah, one more.
Yeah.
Sure.
You mentioned a lot of current authors.
Yeah.
You know, that you visited, and then obviously have influenced your
Yeah.
writing. But you haven't mentioned anything or any influences that you might have had from writers such as Dostoevsky, because writers in general are kind of philosophers. They say their own opinion in their books anyway. So, you know, I mean, what other influences do you have from writers such as?
Well, for this book, it was a very deliberate decision not to take writers from the past, because I wanted to look at Canada as if I just arrived knowing nothing, to throw the map over my shoulder and just be fresh. and very few dead writers make their way in. So that was the point, was to take a slice through, you know, what we're thinking in the present time. Of course, you know, and you're right, I mean, Dostoevsky is a wonderful example to bring up. I was just in Ukraine, where my whole view of Dostoevsky's, you know, What If Eternity is Just an Outhouse Buzzing with Flies was brought to life in an incredible way. That takes too long to talk about right here. So, but, you know, and I'm busy telling my wife, who's a great fan of Dickens, and I don't know how much Dickens you consume, but everything is there. The whole economic crash is in Little Dart. The bank, you know, all the bullshit that happened in America and now Europe the last few years is right there in his incredible novels. And she's thinking of doing a sort of Dickens guide to business. You know, you read the novels and learn how to behave in the face of an economic crash. So yes, you know, and the more I throw books out, the more they are dominated by the sorts of people you're thinking of. Anyway, thank you. I'm sorry.